Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today in this video, we're going to be more discussing democracy and what philosophers thought and what I think of it. Now this video isn't anything against democracy or anything, this is just kind of what people thought about the democracy, what I kind of think about democracy, and certain stuff of that sorts. Obviously I have some notes about from other philosophers, which by the way, I'm not a philosopher, I have no degrees in philosophy, and I am just a person that's giving my opinion on this stuff. And my personal view on democracy is I believe democracy is good. I believe it's good where it works, and I don't think it is, though, for every single culture in this world. I don't think it is perfect. I think that more than likely it is somewhat of a system that can make itself collapse based on the intelligence of the people in the area and stuff. It depends on, the wealth of these people. It depends on everything. It really honestly just depends on your intelligence of the area and stuff like that. But I really think that's the thing that can either make a democracy fail or the democracy rise, is really just intelligence. But we're going to get straight up into this with Plato. And Plato's view on it was he was kind of against it. He thought democracy leads to chaos. Because if everybody gets this equal say and the educated don't, so for example, what basically Plato's trying to sit here and say is that it's not right that everybody gets an equal say, which I do personally agree. He's sitting there and saying that the not educated people should not, not in the sense of not educated of not knowing science or anything like that, not educated in the sense of politics and how the countries ran and how the world is just works at the time and everything. And he thought that the people that were educated on this stuff should have more of a say than the people that have no idea what they are talking about. He believed that the mob would eventually turn into a tyranny. He believed it would just destroy every person's lives in the area. He did not believe democracy was a very good thing, and for a relatively valuable reason also. I mean, at that time, I think it was in Greece that democracy was starting to come up. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink. The democracy was starting to sort of come about more of a indefinite thing into their culture. But the whole thing behind it is that I do kind of agree with Plato here. Those people weren't very educated always on how the political system works, and even nowadays we're seeing that in the country I live in, which is America. It kind of just seems like uneducated people, and no offense to anything, I'm not talking about either side here. Both sides have very uneducated people. I'm just gonna be dead ass with this shit and everything. The issue with both sides right now, and I personally think this is in America and probably some other countries. I don't really know about many other countries' politics right now. I don't go in depth about that stuff about other countries. But the whole thing behind it is I believe this is something we're seeing in America, is what Plato was talking about at this time, is that the uneducated people are on both sides are just destroying this place because they don't know what is actually a good policy for America. I'm going to personally just sit there and say this right now. Last election, if I could have voted at the time, I would have voted for neither person. No offense, I just didn't like either person. I just thought both people just didn't really have the same ideology as me personally. And it's not really the fact that not all of their beliefs, it's really just the fact of a lot of their beliefs didn't line up with mine. Not the fact that all beliefs have to line up with mine, but a lot of their beliefs just didn't align with mine. And personally, I don't even think I should probably be able to vote in this country yet, saying that, I don't think 18-year-olds should just be able to have the right to vote. I don't think that's how that should work either. But he also preferred ruled by philosophy kings, wise and trained leaders. Basically, what he's sitting there saying is that the people that run your country should have some type of experience in this. They should have at least some type of education. They shouldn't just be some random ass motherfucker off the street. Let's take a hit of the anxiety stick. But now we're gonna move more into Aristotle and people like that. I don't know why my hurts so bad right now. But we're going to move more into Aristotle. He considered democracy more of a flawed but more possible system. And the reason why is he saw democracy as a rule by a poor majority, which can be dangerous if ruled only for themselves. And basically, what he's sitting there and saying is that democracy is more ran by the people that, like, whoever has the majority. And at the time, the majority were basically poor people in their country. And with that, he kind of was taking the realization that these people, if they gain power, might legitimately just try to take all the power for themselves and just rule everything. Because, once again, give a poor man, like, God's abilities, what is he going to do? He's going to turn everything into gold, more than likely, just because, he's never had that. But he did, Aristotle did support a constitutional government. That kind of blended with democracy and autocracy, which I don't really know what autocracy exactly is. Let's actually look that up really fast. I'm actually curious on what autocracy actually means. And also, after all, it is a good thing to know. Autocracy is a small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institute. Well, I don't really agree with autocracy, but I do agree. Well, I don't really know, because the small group can turn into a corrupted system also really fast. And that's kind of the issue with that. It's better to, I think, have a mob, because eventually the mob will change. Hopefully your country can just endure for that. Now, we're going into some people who I just haven't heard about until I more looked into this stuff. Obviously, some of these people I have heard about. But not all of these people. But let's go with John Locke, who was born in 1632 and died in 1704. He supported democracy, but liberal democracy. What does that mean? And I don't really know exactly what liberal democracy means. But his thought was, government exists to protect the natural rights, life, liberty, and property of the people. But into that, he also, though, did believe that rulers needed consent from the governed. So basically what he is just sitting there saying is that he doesn't think that, like, for example, I'm the king, okay? I'm sitting there and saying, I want all your fucking wheat. Well, if I'm the farmer, I say no, you shouldn't just be able to take my wheat. We should have to come more to, like, an understanding, I think, type deal. And, like, a more of a, hey, yeah, no, I'll give you 20% of it, but no. Kind of like how taxes are nowadays type deal. It's like more, well, I mean, I don't really know if it's like, that's not really voluntary, though. I don't really know. I mean, I didn't really sign up to pay taxes. I was just kind of born into it. That's the whole thing behind it. I don't know. Like, that's not really how our governments ran at all. But if the government, but he also believed that if the government abuses power, people have the right to revolt. To be honest with you and everything, I don't really know. Because, for example, that can really be determined in a very broad way. Because, for example, government abusing control in the sense of, buying, like, for example, Jefferson. I think it was Jefferson that bought the land from Napoleon, like the Louisiana Purchase. That was technically an abuse of the government's power because he technically didn't have the constitutional right to do that. But at the same time, that benefited the people. But by what he's sitting there and saying is that by them abusing that, those people should have revolted, which they obviously shouldn't have. It was a good move off the United States personally. And even in history, that is seen as that. But we're going to go into John Stuart Mill, who was born in 1806, died in 1873. He was a very pro democracy person. He thought democracy encouraged personal growth in public debate, which is honestly a very true statement. I honestly agree with this guy. Instantly, right off my notes, I will have to say this right now. I instantly agree with him about this guy. It does actually encourage personal growth because you have to grow as a person in order to kind of survive in democracy personally. Because even though you get a say in everything, into everything, you still have to grow in order to survive because there's not going to be people that this is there to save you in that sense. And also it does actually encourage public debate because once again, like for example, our presidential debates in America, it encourages those people to go out in public and have to have strong debate powers and strong debate things and stuff like that. But he also did support the freedom of speech to protect the minority's opinion, which is a very good thing. And this guy seems more of like a enlightened man for the time than ever, in the sense of like he had more of a modern day beliefs and stuff like that. More though, not really, I guess, because at the same time, freedom of speech was kind of I guess no. His support is freedom of speech to the public, protect minorities' opinions. Yeah, I do actually agree with that. That is actually more of a modern day opinion and stuff like that. He warned against tyranny of the majority. The majority crushes minorities' beliefs. Basically, what he's sitting there saying is that, for example, this is a really, really great example. But like in America, whenever there was like poll taxes and stuff like that, the reason that was happening is because the majority of people in America were white rich people or white educated people, and at that time black people were kind of coming out of the slavery era and stuff like that. And it was just the majority there were abusing the fact that they were the majority to still fuck over the minority. And to be honest, in some instances, it still happens till this day. And I'm not saying it happens in probably every single fucking country in this world. It most definitely does. There's always going to be a majority versus a minority, and the minority will always get fucked by the majority. Because, once again, there's tyranny in the majority. But we're going to get more into Karl Marx now, which he is a critic of capitalist democracy, which was a more of a newer thing at that time, because capitalism was sort of a newer thing at the time, coming into the world, with like the Industrial Revolution and stuff like that. But he thought democracy under capitalism is controlled by the wealthy, which is... It is kind of. I mean, not always. Not in every single country, because there's some countries that will just tell the rich to go fuck themselves. Like, for example, there was times in the United States where they did that a lot. Like, with, what's it called? Rockefeller's, monopoly. They tore that fucking shit down. I mean, which I had respect. He believed true democracy requires eliminating class inequality, which is kind of true, because to be honest, if you really want everybody to have the equal say, you kind of have to have everybody on an equal playing level, because once again, if I have huge amounts of money and I throw money into lobbies and stuff, I'm going to have more say in the government than some like me right now, like a person like me right now. He supported workers' control, not just elections, which I don't really know what my notes there exactly means, but I think what I was just basically trying to sit there and say is that he was more about the idea of we should have workers like ideas first over the ideas of just everybody else. But I don't really think that's a good idea either, honestly. I think Karl Marx was more of a crazy guy and stuff, and I don't really think that he was the best philosopher in the world, but I still did include him just because he did actually have some views on democracy and stuff like that. But I hope you guys did actually honestly enjoy this video. I know I definitely did. I really did think it was honestly relatively interesting to relatively look at this stuff. And based off of what I have kind of just gathered from all this, I will have to honestly sit there and say my views on democracy really has not changed. Besides from Plato and Aristotle, which I thought were relatively interesting and kind of has changed my thing, because I don't think that everybody should just get to vote. I think you really should have to have some type of education onto your politics system and how your government works and how the world works in general in order to vote and stuff. And maybe that is to raise the legal age of voting and stuff. Maybe that is the way to do it, but not always, because once again, nowadays really age doesn't mean wisdom. But I hope you guys did enjoy. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. Bye.